All right, let's have a look. So today we're going to be focusing on materials a bit, and most importantly, the focusing on material, making sure the the general, how do you call it, the standard shader is the one I was after. So we're going to focus on that one for a bit, and then if we get time, which we probably should, we'll be looking at applying like Amplify and having a quick look at a node-based shader creation. So basically, yeah, a deep dive into materials for this session. So let's jump in. I'm gonna fix something. Or I do this because I always forget this, so I can look cool. All right. One moment. Just need to check one thing. Okay, cool. So back to it. Let's jump in. There we go. Okay, so all I've done so far before we even begin on any of this is basically unzip the Mona template. That's it. I haven't done anything to it. We're not going to be focusing on assets. We're just been focusing on materials. So that's for that. So I've also added a couple of tutorials that I've used in the past. A couple of things which we'll go into in a second. But for the most part, yeah, this is literally a clean slate, so to speak. So I'll reduce that, and then we'll go to Unity Hub. Always takes a second. All right. Go to open. Let's go to, where was it? I think I put it into here. And open that one. That'll take a moment. Well, yeah. If you haven't got the Mona template, or you need to get Unity itself, we do have how to do that in the docs. So if you check out, what is it now? Because I always use the old one, docs.monaverse.com. There we go. You have all of your assets here, and the main one you'll be needing is Get Started. So this will go through, well, the video of all the things you need, installing 2020.3.18, grabbing the Mona template, unzipping it, and then doing what we're now currently doing, which is open Unity. And then we need to go up to Mona and go load space scenes. So we have our template. Right mouse click on Untitled, remove scene. And nowadays I'll usually get rid of the portal as well, but you can keep that if you want to connect between minted spaces. So there's that. You still need the spawn point, so he's still going to be there, but that's it. So today we're going to focus on creating some very simple objects. So let's say a cube. Let's make this a bit bigger. So let's 2 by 2 by 2. And that's basically it. This is what we're going to focus on. I mean, now, the other thing we're going to do is grab these assets. Now, these are now made, and I think it's done after you've added. For some reason, these folders aren't made until you like open the space, so it's kind of interesting. But either way, we can, where is it? This one, then this one. Okay, so I can grab these from here and I can just drag them onto textures, and that will import them. So note that it doesn't delete them, it just copies them into the files here. And if you look at add your art here, textures, here they are. You'll note that in Unity, they'll always do .metas for a lot of the assets that you create. This is just Unity telling it what to do. So don't worry about the metas too much. But yeah, so that's that. So we have our textures. But the first thing we're going to do is focus on the material shader itself. So right mouse click on materials, go create, go down to material. All right. This is what we're going to focus on today. So up the top of our material, we have shader standard. Now this is probably recommended for most things unless you sort of really know what you're going to do. It has all of the sort of assets that you'll probably want to play with, like color and metallic and smoothness and all these other ones. Another one you might use sometimes is unlit. And what that will do is just have no lighting effects. So if I do that on that, there's, as you can see, no lighting, but that's just color. So I can change the color to whatever I want. If I wanted to, I could select the right one and go texture, and then I can put a texture on it. So let's put that there. Put that on there. And once again, no lighting, just solid light or solid color. And yeah, so unlit is basically no lighting. So you would have transparent, and you would put an alpha in your image that you're adding. And then, of course, transparent cutout, which is sort of the same thing, but it will, if you have a gradient of alpha, this will cut it off. So you'll either have on or off. Cutout technique is usually faster, but of course you don't have the gradient of alpha. So that's unlit. But today we're mostly going to be focusing on standard, because that's the standard for a lot of things. So let's get rid of this for now, because I just want to focus on the basics. So let's put this on here. Now you can't see any difference, but if I go red, black, or whatever color I want, I prefer purple myself. So let's go purple. Now notice with the color, you'll also have alpha. Now if I put this down to sort of more transparent, nothing will change. And this is because the rendering mode also needs to be modified. So this is opaque, e.g. a solid, so it does not consider alpha at all. If we go to cutout, you'll notice that the cutoff here is there again. So the alpha is quite low. So let's say this was a gradient asset. And then you'll have the cutoff, and then once you get down to a certain point, it will turn on. So that's a bad example of how the alpha cutoff works. But once again, the alpha cutout approach is one of the fastest versions of alpha on material in optimization. So depending on, like, if you can use cutout, use that. If it's sort of like a very clear on-off channel. Fade is the next one up, where you can actually get sort of transparency as you see fit. Now, the reason, once again, fade is a little faster than transparent. And this is because fade, I think, doesn't include things like reflection probes and stuff like that. So, rendering mode fade is faster than a transparent, but doesn't look as good in more complex scenes. So once again, if you can get away with fade, use that. Otherwise, use transparent, and you start getting sort of other effects there. So if we go sort of metallic, we start getting some interesting effects with that. For this argument, we're going to stick with opaque. I'm going to keep that at full, just so we can see the other things a bit easier. Okay. So let's go around here a bit. Now, metallic and smoothness fall under the category of what they call PBR, or physics-based rendering, which is short for how metallic is it and how smooth is it. Some different engines or 3D creation tools will use roughness, which is kind of the opposite of smoothness. And when it comes to a map, white is 1 and black is 0. So 1 would be up here, which is very metallic, and 1 on the smoothness would be very shiny. And you can create these down here. So let's add a quick sphere so we can sort of see a few different elements as well. So let's put that up here as well. And let's make this 2 by 2 by 2 as well. There we go. Let's do that and then copy our material on here. Basic. Let's do this a basic material. Okay. So spheres and curved objects are really good for metallic. But then if you have metallic down, note that metallic usually, not always, but usually is either sort of 0 or 1. So an asset is either metallic or not metallic. You can put everything in the middle, but generally it's recommended to sort of keep things metallic or not metallic. But the real magic comes in with smoothness. So smoothness is just how smooth or how shiny, I guess, the asset is, or rough, or matte, I guess you could say, the asset is. And everything will be different based on that. So if you have an asset that has, that might not be the best example. Yeah, we'll worry about that in a sec. Look at that. So, yeah, super useful. You can change it, but I'd recommend keeping it metallic alpha. We'll get to the texture side of it in a second. We'll just keep this simple for now. So we've got color, metallic, and smoothness. Normal map, height map, occlusion, and detail mask are all map, like texture-based things. We'll get to them once we get to that sort of thing. That said, another thing you can edit the standard shader on its own is emission. Now, if you've noticed in Mona, you'll have like a bloom effect in a space. And this is based on the bloom, the intensity of the emission channel. Now, this, of course, can be texture, but for now, let's just focus on a color. So once again, we're going for a sort of a pinkish or a purple. But note down here, we also have intensity. So I'm going to put this up to 2. And that will be sort of a very bright color when you get that in Mona. So much so that let's have a look, because it's quick. Ooh, forgot to do a thing. Hang on. Done. Okay. So let's get our space and drag that in. Okay. So we have our pink assets here. Now note that, where is it? I think it's S, no, it's H. There we go. I've put my bloom intensity down, but if you put it up, you can sort of see the effect, which is quite high. And that's intensity 2. So if you don't want that high, so someone has their bloom intensity really high, then you could put that lower. So that's a 2. I'll say that much. But pretty cool effect if you want to use it. Once again, I'm going to delete this just to make sure that it updates properly next time. Okay, back to our asset. Now, notice that the emission color kind of overrides the albedo, but sometimes you'll kind of toy with, especially if your intensity is lower. So let's put this down to 1. I have noticed that sometimes Unity will just adjust the size of this sometimes, so keep that in mind. So I'm going to keep that. Let's do yellow. And notice if you change this, there is a bit of change. So down there, it's nothing, but up there, it's kind of a little bit of blue. But if I put the intensity up, you'll have that. So sometimes you'll play with both of these colors depending on the effect that you want. So usually I'll sort of like choose a darker color of that because it just kind of feels good in my head. So I'm going to turn that down to 1 and leave that as is. So that's good. Now, another thing to note with Emission, when you bake a scene, and we can actually do it. So let's do it because it won't take long, hopefully. So let's do a quick bake. New light settings. Let's change it to progressive GPU. I'm going to reduce some of these down to speed it up. Let's put that high because there's nothing in the scene. Put that to 2048. Put ambient occlusion on and leave that to go. Yep. Now, if I recall, these might... the other thing I need to do before I forget, because I always do. So this one is already set to static. I need to make sure these are set to static as well. Now, the catch is, and I'm not too sure, so let's find out before I make a statement. Generate lighting. Okay. So as you can see, there's a little bit of light around the asset. Now you can see this a bit clearer in our light map settings. So it does keep those sort of ready to go. So that's cool. Now that's at 1. If I set these to 2, that would be higher. So Emission is very powerful and does some really cool stuff with light maps once you get to those. But that's a super quick example of that. Now, other things we can look at, global illumination, we sort of want to keep that baked. We never want to go real time because that's very expensive. Next up, you look at tiling and offset. Now, these are texture-based things, so we'll look at that when we get to those. And same with secondary maps, we'll get to them as well. Apart from that, if you're getting to the optimized stage, this texture can be instanced using the GPU. So if you have a lot of assets with the same material, you could sort of do some optimization with that button there. So you can use that. So yeah, so that is a basic material. So let's duplicate that. Well, no, let's update it. So let's get rid of these. I'm going to turn that off. And let's get some textures in there. So let's start with a diffuse. Now the color map, or the texture for color, has a lot of different names in shaders. So sometimes it'll be called albedo, sometimes it'll be called diffuse, sometimes it'll be called color. You name it, but it's all the same thing. E.g., what is the color of the material? The next one is the normal. So I'm going to grab that one. Now notice the normal is kind of like a special map that adds kind of bumps. But you have to tell it that it is a normal map. So if you drag it and you haven't done that yet, you can just say fix now, and then it will fix that. Another way to do it is click on the texture itself, go to texture type, and go normal map. So usually it'll be default, but I'm going to do we want it on normal map. So the color, default. Normals, normal. This one hasn't been changed yet. So that's going to be default. So I'm going to do that manually here. So when I drag that one in, it won't ask me to fix it because it's already fixed. Okay. So we have that. Now, as it stands, this is a very shiny piece of wood, which is fine, maybe. Depends on if you want that vibe. But I hope that I created this one correctly. Yeah, that's good. Okay. So when you're doing a texture on a standard shader in Unity, the way Unity does it is a little bit weird. So if you had, well, let's do this. Let's actually pull it up in Photoshop. So what we're doing, and if you roll over an asset, it tells you what this is. So RGB is albedo, transparency is alpha. And on this map, you're looking at metallic is red, and smoothness is alpha. And this annoys me no end. So let's do 1024 by 2024. So we've got that. Let's get rid of the background so it doesn't have. So we have our alpha. All right. So if we exported this, our smoothness would be at 0, which means it would be very rough. And then we need to go to our red channel. Well, we could just do it here. So let's do what can we do? Let's do some. Oops, nope, go away. Right, so let's grab our red. Actually, let's do this. I'm going to do it this way. See if this works at all. So we want everything, for this we want everything to be black. And then I'm going to put white up here. I'm going to put, let's say, I don't know, sort of light gray here. And darker gray here. Grab all of that. Copy merged. And we're going to put this in the red channel. And then we're going to delete the green channel correctly. There we go. So that's basically what we're doing. So you could do, it only pays attention to the red. Green and blue do not matter. Now, the second part is an alpha channel. So just go alpha. Let's just call it alpha. And go okay. And on this one, I'm going to make this side, well, no, let's do this. This black. So we have our red, which is metallic. Not that one. And our alpha, which is, what would you call it? What's the word? So the problem with this asset, and this is what annoys me about the RNA. Now, usually if I'm doing this in Substance Painter, I don't have to worry about this. Substance Painter will sort this out. But say, for example, if I do the alpha thing, that also gets rid of the RGB. So that doesn't work. We actually need these two things. The problem is, if I recall, if I export this as is, I don't think it works correctly. But let's give it a shot. So I'll have to figure out a better way for this to work, or to set up manually, I guess you could say. So I'll look into that if this does not work. If it does, great. Tests, metallic, and smooth. Okay. So let's put this in there. All right. So as you can see, yeah, it kind of works. So the top two is, what was it? Metallic is on, at the bottom it's off, but the smoothness is all over the shop as well. So yeah, I recommend, what do you call it? Substance painter. But if you look at this, for example, you can notice that it's sort of green and those are normal. So the texture doesn't look great, but on the space it kind of does. So if you look really close, the bolts are metallic and the wood is not. And the smoothness is down. So once again, I believe I did that in Substance, which makes this a lot easier and make a lot more sense. So we have that. Now, this is, if I wanted this on a floor, this tile is not tiled enough. Now, when I made this, I actually made sure it tiled. So that's a bit too small. So let's go 3 by 3. So that's what you can do with tiling. I can, if I wanted to, just do like exactly how I want. So you can play with the tiling there. Now what offset will do is we'll move it around the asset. So this works on tileable, but as you can see, there's a little bit of flaws with the tiling there. So make sure that if you're playing with tiling or offset, that it is a tiled asset. So you can see there's a little bit of an issue with that one. But that's what those do. Now with emission, we can't really do that. But let's see what happens when we do this. Right. So we've got our emission, which applies, and once again, this will override the HDR color with this color. So it doesn't really matter what I do there. I can add color to it. So if I make this, say, maybe blue, probably will counter each other out. But if I do this even more red or white, it will do sort of things. Same with this as well. So if I want, let's get rid of that. With our albedo, actually I've got to turn this off as well. So at the moment, white will make sure that the texture color is what the texture's color is, but I can tint it a little bit if I want to with other colors with that. So if I wanted to, I could actually grab white texture. So let's put all of these on there. Notice how this one doesn't have the fix now. This one doesn't have a metallic or smoothness, so I'm just going to put that up a little bit higher to about there, make it metallic because that's cool. Then we have sort of like the ability to change the color of the asset based on this if this is white. So there's quite a bit of scalability using grayscale textures and the color element there. That works. All right. So once again, let's add some textures, make it more complex. This will tile, so if I go 0.5, that'll just move everything down, which is fine. So yeah, quite useful. Now, another useful thing you can do, if you wanted to, is add some detail albedo, so extra color, at a different tile, and a normal map at a different tile. So if I added the wood texture to this, let's tile that up a bit. So let's go 5 by 5. Then you actually have this double element where you have tiling on this one and this one as separate. So you can break up a tile, say the ground. And this is a good example of this, where if we go to the stone material, we actually have a second layer on it to break up tiled asset over a larger distance and a really fine detail with a close distance. So if you look really closely, you can see all the little rocks, which is, I think, this one. And then you have sort of like the underlying structure, which is like this one, or vice versa. Probably vice versa. So using your secondary maps allow you to sort of break up poor tiling asset if you want to. That said, you'll probably want this one to be smaller. So having a 2048 by 2048 texture in both of these is a very large amount of file size for a single material, which is not great, especially when you have a maximum 180 meg total to play with. Okay, so that's basically the standard shader. Usually I will use albedo, metallic, smoothness, normal map, and emission. Occasionally I will use the detail or the secondary maps to get that little bit more detail on that. Okay. So that's the standard material. So yeah. Let's make a wood-based metal. It'd be kind of fun. Well, actually, let's put the normal map on the normal map so that aligns correctly, and then put this one on that. Now, if you want to, actually, you can put this, put the normal map down or even up, so it's really obvious. Be careful, because this will make things look quite unrealistic if you do it too much. But if you do 0.1, you can get sort of like really nice subtle effect with that sort of ability. So that's another thing you can do with the normal map, both on the tiled or secondary and the primary. So we've got that as well. So that's the standard shader. If you have any questions, feel free to add them in the chat or in the comments section once this gets posted on the YouTubes. But yeah, all right. Now let's jump into Amplify to make our own kind of shader. Amplify is an asset that you would buy on the Unity store. I think it ranges from $40 to, well, maybe $30 to $60, depending on if it's a sale. Unity always has sales, so I'd probably recommend waiting for it. I believe another tool, this one, Amplify Shader. Let's go to the store. Just have a quick look. Amplify does a few things. So it's not just the node-based creator. So at the moment, $88, but this is on sale. Sometimes you'll get it down to $44, like half price, which is pretty good. So recommended. Another alternative is called Shader Forge. I haven't used it, but it's very similar. I think Shader Forge used to be on the asset store, and they are now not on the asset store, but I believe it's free, but it's basically the same thing. So a lot of the things that happen in Amplify happen in Shader Forge with the same result. So you could always look into that as well. As with all imported packages, we go to the package manager, go to my assets, click on the asset that you own. I have a few because there have been too many sales and I have no self-control. And in this case, we want the Amplify Shader editor, and then we go import. this will come up. Usually I'll just add it all. They have some good examples that you can use as a base. So you can definitely use those to help you create your own. Right. So once that is in, you'll have this down here: Amplify Shader Editor, and that's fine. Now, if I recall, shader, Amplify Surface Shader, we can just do that, and that will create our new shader. Now, this is not a material. This is the shader. So let's go Tutorial Shader, and then when you go Return, it will bring up the window for you, which allows us to edit the shader. So let's make a name. So I'm going to make this TME, as in the Meta Empire tutorial. Shader. Enter. Every time you make a change, you want to save the asset, and that will update it. And basically, these are all of the things that you can play with on your material. So once again, albedo is color, normal is normal, emission is emission, metallic, etc., etc. The catch is, with this, we can add a bunch of cool stuff. So let's go a Voronoi. Kind of forget half of all of this stuff. So let's go that. What happens there? Right, so I got that. Let's do 10, 45. There we go. So basically there's a lot of nodes that allow you to do really cool stuff with shaders. You can grab things from like light and dimensions and matrices and trigonometry and UV coordinates and all this stuff that honestly I don't know that much about. So if you're a programmer, this is really cool stuff. If you're a me, this is really hard stuff. That said, you can do some interesting stuff. So let's see what someone like me can do. So let's go back to 0. And let's do 100. Okay, that's cool. Yeah, no, that's cool. Let's do 75. Okay, now you got that color, and I don't want that color, so I'm going to change that somehow. How do I do that? As a blend? Image effects? I'll give it a shot. Nah. Yeah, okay. So let's put the source in there. Let's make this desaturate. Is that in there? No. Let's try multiply. Yeah. No. You got to put a color underneath it. Well, let's do this. Desaturate. We could just do that. Oh, why doesn't that work? Okay, that's cool. There we go. So a lot of it's numbers, and all sorts of things. But say, for example, I think there's one that allows you to make just normals, which is pretty cool. Normal from texture. No, normal from height. So we want to do that. And then we want to put that in normal. Does that work? Nope. Strength 1. Okay. Yeah. So this is a very simple and a very bad example of Amplify. Now, one thing I'm very interested in is making a shader. So I'm gonna give this a shot for the remainder of this one. Is where I want the ability to create an asset or a material that I can change the color of parts of the object, if that makes sense. So I'm going to do that now. So we want the texture to be spelled correctly. So this is a texture sample. All right. Now, one thing you can do, and this is where you start doing some really cool stuff with Reactor, is if I have, well, let's do this one again. So we want, oh, there's different types. Cool. Oh, it's the same thing. It's no fun. Also no fun. Okay. Anyway. So you can make, I think, which one is it? If you make it a reference, if you make this a reference, this will be available outside of the shader. So let's have a look at that. Because, so go TME, which is I did before, tutorial shader, which is what I've got. And as you can see, texture sample, I can do this. But if I turn this off and save it, let's go back. Change this to just standard, and then change it back to this. That usually means that it will be not available. So I'm not sure why that didn't update. So let's do another example of Control D to duplicate that and put one in the normal, like so. I'm going to rename this to, let's go albedo. And I'm going to rename this one to normal. Then if we do that, we've got that. Usually, that's not visible. Okay, interesting. Okay. So say, for example, I wanted to tile these. Well, let's do that. I think there's an actual, not UV then. Texture coordinates. So we're going to do this on the UV of both of these. And then we've got tiling here. But I want to make this a number that I can tweak in the material. So how do I do that one again? That is maybe a vector 1. Vector 2, X and Y. So that works. X and Y. Okay. So if I save that, save, yeah. So as you'll note, there is no vector 0 in here. So let's go tiling. And then I want to make this a, here we go, property. So as you note here, now we have an X and a Y, a Z and a W, and we want these two. So if I adjust this one, this and this, then this would modify the texture here. So let's do a simple example of the wood and the normal map here. And that's because the tiling is 0, 0. So the default value we want to be 1 in here. Save that. So that's correct. But if we change this to 10 and to 10, well, that's a bit high. That's a bit high. There we go. So this allows us to, one, make it easy to edit some of the values that we want in our asset. But more importantly, if it is available here, you can actually animate a lot of these using Reactor. So if I wanted to, I could actually scale this tile up in Reactor by walking into Collider, for example. Now, of course, anything that you have access to would allow you to modify assets of your materials on your assets using Reactor simply by making it a property with a good name. So we've got that. Now, if I wanted to, I could put a default texture in there if I wanted to. I don't want to because I want to keep the file size pretty small, but you could got that there if you want it. So let's do that. And let's put metallic and that's another thing. Instead of adding the image texture file type, you can just drag and drop it, and there it's there. Now, this is a good example of having a bit more control. So if you really wanted to, and I'm tempted to do this because I really hate the red and alpha, I could create an element that has the texture and then feeds the red into metallic and then the green into smoothness. But in this case, the smoothness is on the alpha. Save that. And therefore we have our asset there. And once again, these two are tiled differently, so we need to make sure that's the same, like so. So we have that. Yeah. So there's lots of things you could do. This is a very simple example, like very, very simple. But as an example of Reactor, so imagine you've made a really cool shader, e.g. you were more knowledgeable than me about all of this sort of stuff, and you want to animate this with a Reactor. So let's give that as an example. So let's do that. Okay, so let's make the baseline 1 by 1. So that's good. And then let's create a Reactor asset. I'm gonna put that there. Add Reactor. Already done. Now we need, what do we need? A box collider. Cool. Now I'm going to move this asset rather than the collider itself to be over our assets. I'm going to press the white box to make it more easier to see. I'm going to go, if you enter this object, then it's going to tile up, for example. That'll work. Because why not? Okay. So that's what we're going to do. Now, the thing is, we need our cube and our sphere to have an animator. Now, I'm going to do them both. So I'm going to put all of these assets in one. And then I can put the animation on the parent, so I have access to both children. Animator only has access to itself or children. So if I put an animator on this, I couldn't animate the cube if I wanted to. So there's that. Okay, so let's get some space over here. Let's add some animation. So on the parent, create. Let's go texture, idle. So this the default state. We're going to record this. I'm going to select the cube, go down to the child here, and just go 2, 1, 2, 1. And also 2, 1, so make sure these are done. And probably this as well. Like so. So it has those 3 settings done as idle. So when I go back to this, it'll reset to the default. Now, actually, that's not what we want. I'm going to undo all of that, sorry, and add these ones. Now note these don't go green, but it does come up here. So these don't automatically go red like they do elsewhere, but that could just be an Amplify Shader element. So just making sure that it's done here. If you wanted to, you could actually add the property as well. So let's say on the cube, we want our mesh renderer, which has our material. Where is it? Material underscore tiling. There somewhere. Maybe not. Okay. So there's that. Now the thing is, this is when you're animating, you can actually edit the material on an asset rather than the material itself. So I can't animate this asset, but I can animate this asset, and this won't affect this asset. So just as an example, I'm going to, let's say, triple that. So that's, once again, cube, 1, 1. And then we're going to add a new texture. And let's just put this to tiled. Save. And then put this to 3, 3. Now notice how the keyframe is there because the record is on. Now, if I wanted to, and I should, because that'd be cool, I'm actually going to do this animated. So when you scroll it up, it actually does that over time, which is kind of what we want. Then when we have our animator, and sometimes it'll not select the tool that you have the animator on, so make sure that's there. Texture idle, right mouse click, make transition. Go to parameters, Boolean. Let's go tile. I usually use a capital just because that's my standard. Make sure that the capitals, or the, what do you call it? Not pronunciation. The thing that does the stuff. Capitalization, that's one. Make sure the capitalization is correct in your reactor. So on tile, true, go to tiled. Otherwise, tile goes to false. And we can see that result down here. So if we click on this arrow, scale up, you can see it there very subtly. Well, you might not be able to because the compression on the stream is not great. So we have our animator. Next, we go to our reactor that we haven't applied anything. Hopefully this works. Yep, that works. Now, the name is purely the name. So tile, start. We want to set our animator. So that's our object with the animator. Parameter, which was tile with a capital T, which is a Boolean, to true with a lowercase t. Done. And then when you leave, tile end, set the asset with the animator, parameter tile, which is a Boolean, to false. And this is our box collider. And that's basically it. So let's save that. and playground that. Ready. So I'm hoping, there we go. There you go, that's a bit better. So I'm in the box, and therefore the tile is going. It's on loop, which I can actually remove. Hey cat, how's it going? And then if I get it out of the collider, it will reset. So that's a simple example of using Amplify to do cool stuff. Delete for the next round. So let's go to our animation and get tiled and remove the loop. So that is on the animation itself. This one is looped. It doesn't really matter because it doesn't do anything. And then we have that. And that's it for our reactor. Now, where is my... Did I get rid of it? I think I got rid of it. Open it in shader. So double click or open in shader here. So we have that. So yeah. What are you up to today, Kat? You making cool things? Saving the world? One metaverse space at a time? Okay. So, what can we do for the rest of this session? Because that's basically it. Making a standard shader and setting up the textures as you see fit. Installing Amplify. Creating a basic Amplify shader with sort of public assets that allow you to property assets that allow you to animate them in Unity, which means you can create a reactor to edit them when you run into or set off the events that reactor is suitable for, such as entering a collider and exiting a collider. Ooh, TikTok Live. I have not done that. I think I journeyed onto TikTok for a little bit and then just got off it. It is a time sink. I'm trying to get off some of my social media because it's like that's a half hour I could have done with. I gotta be building stuff more. Alrighty. So what do I want to do? I don't have any assets that would need the color coding thing, but I'm going to try and do that anyway. So these go here, and let's go color. Let's do some stuff. So this is me figuring stuff out. I'm not the best at Amplify. I don't know any of this programming stuff. I just know how powerful it is. It's super cool. Well, you're welcome to join in and learn all the things and ask any questions if you have any. So we need color and we need a mask. So this would be mask. Mask. Cool. That we want to be a property so we can change it. Primary color. That works. Okay, and what we need to do is blend these two. Is that something I can do? Maybe. Range and fuzziness? Yeah. Let's use the internet. Okay, amplify mask area. Yeah. There's a lot of really good tutorials on Amplify. I find that the shaders that no, not, the tutorials on the Amplify channel are very programmer heavy ones. So I will watch some of them and it's like, I'm sorry, I don't understand anything you've said for the last 5 minutes. So I'm hoping to find eventually some more designer focused tutorials eventually. Um, that said, and I'll pull this up in a second. Hang on. So you have in the asset, like you have access to all of these tutorials that are really cool. That can help you do like force fields and low poly water, which you could probably, and you can update some of these as you see fit. So there's a lot of tools that allow you to get started with Amplify pretty quickly. Rim light's always fun. I just like it. It's cool. Oh, that's a thing. Oh, I got to pull that one out. I've got some ideas for that one. So yeah, quite a lot of demos that you can figure out a lot of stuff. That said, I don't want that. I just want to do things. Creative functions. This one, I think. No. Where's all this stuff? This like the docs are pretty thorough. I'll say that much. Tutorials. See what we got there. A lot of tutorials. Yeah. So you can definitely follow those. I'm not going to because you can easily watch those. Is it shader functions? Is that all of them? That'd be cool. I could do toon shaders. Yeah, like there's a lot of stuff you can do. So it's pretty powerful. And yeah, if you're someone who knows how to do any of this sort of stuff, it's really powerful. One approach also is just to type in what you think it might be. And then if you roll over it, it's like masks certain channels from vectors or color components, which is kind of what we want to do. Let's change this one to trim industrial. Yeah, this one. Ah, okay. That's purely the mask. So that's just RGBA, which we don't really want. Not exactly it. So sometimes when you roll over the top, it'll give you hints. Let's try it. Nope. What's another thing we can do? Blend, no. The other approach is go over here and then see if you can find what you're after in like either through search or by looking at the categories. So, for example, textures, which we don't really want, because we want to do things to the textures. What is it? Panner is fun. You can actually make assets like pan just manually. So if I did that, put this behind because we want to pan the UV of the asset. So that's one. I think that's how you do it. Or it's after. One of the two. Yeah. So you got color codes as well. So UV goes to there, and then theoretically, that could work. Let's do this. So texture coordinates, and then make that 1, 1. So that works better. Let's put which is 1. So vectors, you can have 2. Ooh, what's split? That might be interesting. The numbers. Where's the numbers? Operators. No. Constants. That's the one. Float. So if you want one number to go through time, let's say the minimum is 0, the maximum is 10, and timer. Let's go timer. Default value at 2. Save. Now I'm hoping, I don't know if this is going to happen though. No. Why not? Let's find out. Speed. Now this is a thing. So there's an issue that comes up occasionally with the memory, with a warning. I believe if you get rid of the ASE material inspector, just delete that. That doesn't come up anymore. So that's that. Oh, maybe not. Ooh, let's do this. I'm going to switch these. So the order of events is actually quite important as well. So let's get rid of some of these. Put that entirely. Now, project settings editor asynchronically that. Now that said, what is it? Project settings. Where was it? We'll leave that up for when it comes up again. The other thing is it might actually be here as well. So I did get rid of it once. I just forgot how I did it. Editor. This one. Asynchronous, that one. There. Now we have a green. Okay, so that's how you get rid of that error. I don't know how important it is, so don't quote me on it. What is that? Okay, and let's see if that works. So timer 2 to tiling. And let's do these as well. Yep. Okay. It's not panning. Why isn't it panning? This is where I just start randomly playing with things. Yeah. Not too sure. So yeah. It's less of a workshop and more of a play. um was it Switch that I saw that was pretty cool? Split. Yeah, that's not it either. So yeah, I think I'm going to wrap that. This is less of a workshop and more of a me failing, which is fine. I'm okay with that. That said, hopefully you get an idea of how useful Amplify can be, especially with the tutorials that are available for it, with people who are better at it than I. So yeah, by using Amplify or programming a shader manually if you wanted to, but by using Amplify, Shader Forge, or Shader Forge, Amplify, or programming, you can make certain parameters available to animate in Reactor, in an animator, and therefore you have control over it in Reactor, which is super powerful. The more you get into shaders, so that would be something I would recommend if you want to start doing or start getting down the Reactor Reactor rabbit hole. We'll say that one. I'm gonna have to spend some more time with Amplify, because I would like to do this eventually. Once again, making assets where you could create, what would you call it? So if I owned the space, I could get into a special room or something that's secret. But then I could change the colors of the environment to things that I like, in the areas of the textures that I want access to. So if I had like a bunch of different assets, but they all had the same shader, that would allow me to create different textures, different colors, to the things that I want. So that would be pretty cool. What else is there? I'm sure you could do things like, well, let's put in a rim light because rim lights are fun. No. What's that called? Fresnel. That's it. Um, Combine, is that a thing? Append? Not really. Let's do blend. Blend, no one's blend. Blend, just blend. Yep. So we got our source. What's Destiny? It's a bit hardcore. No idea. The best idea. I also recommend if you're playing with the what do you call it? The sphere is probably the best to get an idea of how these effects work on top of each other. So there's that. Image effects. What do we got? Yeah, blend operations maybe. You also don't need to just like add them. You can do ifs as well, so you could actually do some interesting comparisons there. So let's see if this works. Okay. Let's do 0.1. 1. 0.1. Done these before and it used to work. Yeah, that's just going to make everything to 1. Yeah, I've forgotten everything. All right, I give up. I give up. I will have to have a day or a week to get my Amplify Shader skills back up. But yeah. There's that. Okay, so I'm probably going to wrap it up there for the evening. And yeah, I'll probably come back to an Amplify workshop once I know more about Amplify and figure out all the basics again. That said, so I'm going to go on another different direction. Is you have all of these examples. So if I go built-in example, like double click on that, import. I probably should have done this at the start, to be honest. Because then we can start pulling apart a lot of the shaders. Now, note that Mona uses the built-in render pipeline, not HDRP or URP or LWRP, lightweight RP. So make sure that you use or test the built-in samples to make sure that you use the right ones. Now, let's put some things on fire. Let's see what happens here. Those are textures based. Okay. Perfect. What? There we go. Okay. So if I double click on this or go to, if I go to opening shader editor, you can see something that's a little bit more complicated. So, wow, they have a thing called burn effect. Really? Okay. So you got your textures, but then you have these other elements here. But let's go into something else like rim light. Yeah, there's the Fresnel. How did they do it? Okay, here we go. We got view direction, normalize, dot, saturate. Like, yeah, I'm not gonna know any of this. But it's interesting that this one doesn't use a Fresnel effect because the Fresnel does that a lot quicker. So anyway, so this is the manual way to make this Fresnel effect. And that looks like that. What else do we have? Interesting. Ooh, water. Nope. That one. Oh, there's an animate. Okay. So you can actually do animation in Amplify as well, which is pretty cool. You can also edit and modify vertices, as you can see here. So some people, I think in the asset creation challenge, someone made basically a whole asset in the shader. I have no idea how they did it, but it was amazing. So that was pretty cool as well. So yeah, there's a lot of stuff you can do, which is really cool. And matcap. I think a lot of these aren't working because you have to put in a texture as well. So, okay, interesting. So matcaps are usually, if you have a sphere, the sphere will become the shading of the asset depending on its thing. So ZBrush uses that, which is really cool. Some really interesting effects that you're allowed to. They can do some interesting stuff with that. So yeah. Now, if we go in that, maybe we can do cool stuff like that. So this is a good example of what you could animate. So if you had that effect at dissolve amount, and let's look at this. So we have our dissolve, we have our burn effect, we have our textures, and we have the dissolve amount here, which is our open property, which allows us to grab our asset and therefore animate it. So if I had a wood, so let's say a floor, so let's put that in our asset like so. Luckily it has a normal, so that's good. Let's also tile this a little bit. So let's go 3 by 3, I think worked well. With our dissolve guide, so we could change the style of this working. Where? This one. Okay. So yeah, if we animate this, we have a burning house, for example, or whatever you like with that sort of effect. So yeah, cool stuff. If you know what you're doing, I don't. I steal other people's ideas. But this would be one thing that I would like to spend a lot more time on and get better at. I wouldn't be able to do a lot of stuff, but with all the tutorials out there, I could definitely come up with some things that look cool, even if it's just tweaking other components that other people have made. So I'm going to wrap it up there, exactly 1.5 hours in, so we can do that. Hopefully that has helped open the scope of the potential for using Reactor or making your own shaders in Mona. Note that all of the shaders you create do have to be WebGL compatible. That said, I don't know which nodes in the shader are not WebGL compatible, so you'd have to test that on the regular if you're doing complex shaders. Pardon me. That said, if you're not doing complex ones, you should be okay. So keep that in mind. But otherwise, let's wrap it up there. Thanks all for joining. I'll be wrapping up there for now, and I'll see you all in the Discord or elsewhere. Have a good evening. Happy building.